Orange hair, green shirt, attending elementary school, and wielding enough firepower to make John Wick wince. This controversial character is not only one of the oldest and most recognizable Flash game characters, but is also one that has played an integral role in the history and notoriety of Newgrounds. Their original game predates the launch of the Newgrounds automated portal, making this character old enough to drink anywhere in the world. Although based on their hardcore do-what-I-want attitude and tendency to cause outrage in parents and teachers, I'll assume they've been doing that a heck of a lot longer. A character that has remained popular and relevant for all this time, today celebrating the 15th annual day dedicated to them, with possibly more fans now than ever. This is Tom Fulp's classic character, Pico. How's it going, guys? My name's Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. This is Flashlight, the series where I talk all things Flash related. I recently did a video on the history and lore of Tankmen. It's only fair that Pico now gets his time to shine. A quick but meaningful thank you to the sponsor of this video, shapez.io. Do you feel that your life lacks squares, circles, diamonds, shapes of all kinds? We've got a massive shape shortage over here. Then yeah, this game's gonna scratch that itch you'll never want for shapes again. Extract shapes, move them down the line, cut them up, rotate them, dip them in dyes, and slap them all back together. The more you play the game, the more complex your tasks at hand are gonna get, and the more you're gonna have to test the limits of your planning and organization. I thought I'd share a few clips of myself struggling my way through the game. So far so good, I'd say. Oh my god, this is so stupid. What am I thinking? Oh man, this all just really fell apart, didn't it? Has that never been correct? Has it just not been moving or producing or doing anything all that time? The planning, the thoughts, the execution. It's quite exciting. The moments where it feels like it comes together, you know? This is coming from someone who had literally never played one before. I always just thought they were kind of terrifying. Shapes is a wonderful entry point. The art style is simple and honestly has that Flash game appeal that I know you'll all love. And it just keeps things clean and organized and easily comprehensible. And while yeah, I had issues, there's just no beating that feeling of satisfaction when you identify something inefficient and come up with a better structure to maximize your shape-oriented returns. I hope that my structure and organization of the remainder of this video is nowhere near as poorly put together as my own attempt at a factory was. So, back to Pico. This character dates back to 1999 with Pico School, created by Newgrounds founder Tom Fulp when he was about 20 years old. The gameplay might not seem like much now, but a full point-and-click style game made in Flash was essentially unheard of at that point. Being made in Flash 3, predating ActionScript, the programming capabilities available to Tom would have been little more than simple go-to and play style functions. I mean, that's barely a functioning play-pause button, let alone moving through rooms, engaging with characters, collecting items, and battling through different boss fights. Tom was a bit of a whiz kid, and it was clear very early on what a pioneer in the Flash gaming world he was going to be. I thought it would be nice to slip in a fun fact early on in this video taken from an interview with myself Tom was kind enough to participate in. The full transcript will be available over on the Two Left Thumbs Patreon. Speaking on the origins of the name Pico, I had originally named him Pogo, but then found a website called Pogo, so I decided to change his name to Pico, inspired by a character in Cosmic Fantasy 2 for the TurboGrafx 16. I'm curious if Pogo would have had the same staying power and appeal. If you were to look at Newgrounds today, on that Pico School submission, you would see an upload date of April 30th, 2006, which is a date that also marked the first ever Pico Day, coinciding with Tom Fulp's birthday. The modern Flash portal didn't exist in 1999, so the game existed on the site without a proper upload date, user credit system, or the ability to rate or comment. Eventually, Tom decided it was time to have Pico School properly on the Newgrounds portal. It seemed like such a shame for such a foundational game to not exist within that amazing structure Tom had created. I'll share a bit more on that down the line. Tom also wanted to re-upload the game with some crucial performance updates made. He stitched that Flash 3 version of the game together in a way that as computers became faster, the boss fights also became faster and kind of impossibly difficult. The new version has locked-in boss frame rates that make it a manageable challenge once again. While we can look back at Pico's school and admire the struggle the game must have been to make, the game made an impact for very different reasons than being technically impressive. Even by today's standards, the violence and gore go well beyond what is seen in many Flash titles. This was Tom and Newgrounds seemingly taking a stand. This site was going to be different and no subject matter was off limits. In April 1999, we had the tragedy of the Columbine High School Massacre, among the deadliest school shootings in history, and one that is notorious for the resulting press coverage that led to numerous copycat crimes and shootings. PICO School was made very shortly after in direct response to Columbine. While the true upload date is lost without the use of the portal, the original PICO School is estimated to have been made public around June or July 1999, confirmed by Tom Fulp, so just a few months after that Columbine tragedy. I don't think my goal was to shock and offend. I think I was just trying to be outlandish. The first web game I made was Club a Seal, and the intent wasn't to come off as pro-seal clubbing. Similarly with PICO School, he was obviously never supporting that as a course of action, but it came at a time when people were obviously upset. The story of PICO's school being that of several goth kids initiating their own school shooting, and PICO steps up to put an end to it, giving you an option at several stages to execute several of the perpetrators yourself. Obviously, students pouring fountains of blood, seemingly making light of a national tragedy, was something that people were going to take offense to, and it's not very often that a game can feature an end boss with their wang hanging out through the whole battle, and almost never have that be a part of the conversation. But Tom has said now, I wasn't being sensitive when I made it. I wasn't thinking about how it would share the world with the victims of Columbine, and how more school shootings were yet to come. Suffice to say, you didn't want to be caught playing this one on the school computers. Newgrounds was kind of a haven for early violent and deranged offerings from Flash creators that were not welcome elsewhere. Tom had several of his own out-there creations like Club a Seal and Teletubby Funland, the entire Assassin series where you're able to kill celebrities, or gags like the Small Penis program. Most other creators had to resort to similarly hosting their own games on their own private websites. In those early days, Tom would reach out to creators personally, asking if they wanted their project added to Newgrounds. And while clubbing a virtual seal might make some squeamish, and pot-smoking Teletubbies might make parents think,
"Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?" What kind of an example are we setting?
Or blowing up celebrities might make you question Tom's frame of mind, he explained it as such. The goal wasn't to be upsetting. I wanted to entertain people and make them laugh. I still don't think stuff like Club a Seal and Assassin were as sinister as they sound. And Assassin was technically punching up. Nothing was ever advocating a particular behavior or inciting any form of violence of its own. It's the same fundamental misunderstanding that surrounds the conversation of violence in video games today. But PICO was as in-your-face as it possibly could have been. While it's a heroic story in many ways, it was filled with curse words, pot smoking, and violence that may have made mass shooting feel like a punchline. PICO made it to several newspapers, and Tom was at one point scheduled for a CNN interview. I suspect that never took place since someone had the good sense to realize all that was going to accomplish was pushing a new wave of traffic to a website they had already written off as degenerate. But joke's on them, that edgy origin and subculture built the foundations for what is still one of the most free and creator-friendly platforms on the internet. The extent of the controversy isn't documented particularly thoroughly, but there are reports of Tom receiving various threats, both violent and legal. At one point, Newgrounds had a lit section where Tom documented some of the hate mail he received in those early days. It can still luckily be accessed through the Wayback Machine. Some comments from Tom dating to back then. Some kids shoot up a school and people start pointing the finger. I'm sure these same people are off protesting something new by now. Whenever I use quotes from Tom from our interview, I'll utilize this little Tom Fulp icon. Whenever I'm pulling from old blog posts of his on Newgrounds, I'll feature a little tank logo instead. I'm a sensitive guy, and I feel bad about what happened in Colorado, but I'm not going to accept any responsibility for it. And back then, Newgrounds also featured the assassin character, Shotgun Man, who wore a trench coat and carried a big gun. He existed before Columbine, yet many also took offense to this, thinking his attire was meant to glorify those events. Here are a few excerpts from those saved emails. Do you have any idea what has happened in Colorado? You were on here promoting killing people. Where do you think those boys came up with half the crap they did? You may think that it's just a harmless game, but kids get on here and take this stuff seriously. You're just adding to the destruction. The Hamster dance is cute, cow dance, etc. Killing is not cute. If you think it is, then you are a sick person. In light of what happened at Columbine High School, your site is terribly sick. It may or may not have played a part in what happened, but the image of a person with a gun and a long coat cannot be assigned to simple coincidence. Tom replied to several of these and really egged this one on, who at one point in their lengthy email made a big show of them having a PhD, therefore making their opinion more valid. Actually, you can chalk it up to coincidence. That image was around long before the Colorado incident. Trench coat is the ideal overcoat when trying to conceal large weapons, which is why it has been used to represent murderers for several decades now. I believe the Terminator even used one. Was the Terminator making light of the incident in Colorado? I am appalled that you would continue the unmitigated and childish violence that you advocate on this site. And you know about a dozen other generic mentions of Tom being a sick person. But who's laughing now? Now sick means cool. With all this hate and some very visceral reactions to it, something I've always wondered was whether or not Pico's school was made in direct response to Columbine, or if that was an independent topic Tom was intending to address. I had been working on a game for Pico when Columbine happened, and as a result, Columbine changed what the game for Pico was. That event had a lot of parallels with my own high school experience, down to things like them being KMFDM fans. I was big into the goth scene, and Newgrounds had a big goth following, so I started hearing from anxious kids who were under extra scrutiny at school because they looked like the type that might shoot everyone. It was on my mind a lot, and I sort of poured it all out into Pico's school. So the game was not only made in response to Columbine, with commentary about the school system, troubled youth, and school shootings as a whole, it was meant to be both a healthy outlet for Tom and for kids who were now facing harassment at their own schools. Looking back at Pico now, and holding it up against other controversial games from over the years, it's easy to see the difference is context. Newgrounds may include lots of shocking content, but uses its underjudgment section to flag and remove anything outright homophobic or racist. Honestly, it's better at filtering and removing that content than YouTube. Many years later, a user created a very disturbing, yet well-crafted game that put the player in control of the literal gunman of Sandy Hook. This was not some fictionalized story, it was meant to be the true event. The game was graphic and beyond distasteful. Tom made a full post on Newgrounds about censorship, but the part that stood out to me was his quote, "Today I'm choosing respect for the Sandy Hook parents over respect for Newgrounds' censorship policies." Tom indicated either decision put a knot in his stomach. Favor sensitivity of the victims of that tragedy, or stick to that pillar of freedom that had held up Newgrounds all these years. But I think anyone who played that game knew that this was the right choice. Looking back on that now, I'm still fine with the decision. In the early years, I felt more of a responsibility to give everyone a platform, but by 2012, I felt it was time to set some boundaries and not live in misery. It was a new level of dark. One thing that Pico has never been was tone deaf. The game was intentionally painted with bright, lively colors, set with characters so comically young that their weapons are about 3 times larger than them. The commentary in the game is on fanaticism and radicalization, the dangers of blind content consumption and following. Newgrounds user Boss made a great observation that Pico comes across as a renaissance man in the final moments of the game, encouraging Cassandra to seek artistic expression by maybe making music instead of only listening, or rather self-referentially, create games about killing celebrities. The themes and positivity at the root of the game were quickly lost on anyone who never bothered to look beyond the surface. Shockingly highbrow and philosophical for a game that features a character throwing their turds at you from within their bathroom stall. Pico is a hard thing to describe. It was a lot of my identity dumped into a game. Like, the whole idea of being the hero and saving your school was appealing to me because I had merely existed in the background of my high school. And Pico has a whole monologue in there about expressing yourself with your creativity, which is what I would do with animation in games because I was otherwise too quiet to be noteworthy. There are parts of it that are personal, parts that are satire of various panics of the day, and other parts that are just trying to be as ridiculous as possible. The game was edgy, but it was also thoughtful and considerate of the circumstances and potential root causes. It maybe wasn't as sensitive as it could have been, but it had a point to make rather than assigning blame. Then worried adults spun around and blindly assigned blame to it. That really covers the origins and controversy that surrounded the character, but obviously he has come to represent so much more than that. In my Tankman history video, Tom had indicated that he views the Tankman as the site mascot, and PICO as a stand-in for the user, which makes sense with PICO being featured as the voting method for Newgrounds submissions for many years. That was only recently updated when Newgrounds did away with the separate voting and review score system. I missed this in my Tankman research, but back in 2002, well ahead of the 2006 Tank logo update, Tom was actually entertaining the idea of PICO instead becoming the site mascot. Obviously, that never came to fruition.
This is PICO Day. Join with us as we celebrate.
In January 2006, Newgrounds user Gallo Glasses suggested the idea of starting a PICO Day. Mowgli then suggested April 30th to match up with Tom's own birthday. So in classic Newgrounds fashion, this tradition was entirely born from the community. For a first annual PICO Day being announced only a few months ahead of time, the showing from the community was outstanding. There were over 60 movies and games created especially for this occasion. While we've had a lot of incredible PICO content over the years, there are some really noteworthy and outstanding contributions from that very first year. Dead Toast, known now for creating the popular action platforming deranged fever dream of a parkour game, My Friend Pedro, made a pseudo 3D remake of that first PICO game. It's incredibly polished and remains one of the most popular of the many PICO School remakes. Side note, a brief history of how My Friend Pedro started as a Flash game also exists on the channel. I have quite a few episodes of this Flashlight series at this point. I recommend checking out all of them. Well, obviously I would. I'll put a card link in the top right if you want to quickly check that one out and, circle back to here. Brush up on as much Flash and Newgrounds history as you can. Huge names from around the site, many of who still upload to Newgrounds today, like Afro Ninja, TMST, and Bombtunes all participated. Tom Fulp alone submitted 6 different projects. Newgrounds has a cap of 2 submissions per day, so these were spaced out from April 29th to May 1st. Darnell Plays with Fire, the premiere episode of PICO, and Nene Interactive Suicide, both originally posted to Newgrounds in 1999 ahead of the portal launch, were now brought into the fold on April 29th. It's funny to see that only the Nene game achieved a daily 4th prize. At least neither of them got blamed. On April 30th, Tom uploaded his updated PICO School to round out the trilogy of original PICO projects, as well as the brand new Resident PICO. There's not a lot to this one, with PICO walking around and shooting up zombies before a big boss fight. This was apparently a smaller project, dusted off and expanded specifically for PICO Day. It's noteworthy for being the first PICO project worked on by Jose Ortiz, aka Mind Chamber, an animator who was hired as a Newgrounds staff member and made responsible for taking over the visuals of the PICO series moving forward. I was a big fan of Transformers and RoboCop, and Jose made these really stunning animations about Transformers and RoboCop, so we instantly bonded. He also teamed up with Psycho Goldfish this year to create PICO Unloaded the game, what has remained one of the most popular PICO games based on one of the most popular PICO movies ever, also made by Mind Chamber just a few years earlier. And in an effort to have all his PICO games on the portal, May 1st saw the release of PICO vs. Uber Kids and PICO vs. Bear, originally from 2000 and 1999 respectively. Around March 2002, Tom had shared, "We are on the verge of hiring Jose Ortiz to do art on a full-time basis. He was going to do the art and animation for PICO 2, as well as Newgrounds, an adult-oriented offshoot of Newgrounds. Before they started displaying adult-oriented ads and allowing for more mature content, the core Newgrounds was primarily focused on content that was controversial for being violent rather than pornographic. Newgrounds remained free, but Newgrounds would be subscription-based, and was intended to be the primary method of paying Jose's salary. How's that for a nugget of Newgrounds history? It's absolutely wild to think that people have been making such inventive and unique creations for all this time, based on only a few base characters and antagonists. There has never been another mainline PICO game in the time since. 2021 was actually incredibly special in that Tom Fulp uploaded his first PICO-based content in 15 years, thanks to a massive surge in relevance and popularity with Newgrounds sensation Friday Night Funkin. The lore of that game features PICO acting as a hired mercenary sent to kill a boyfriend. Upon arriving for the kill, he realizes that this is his ex from many years ago. There's a lot of people who like to deny that canon in Friday Night Funkin'. It's been confirmed like 100 times by the developers and Tom Fulp. Yeah, PICO and Boyfriend is legit. They instead wrap it out with a series of songs that absolutely slap. A phrase I've maybe never said out loud before. I don't know if it suits me. I didn't give any input on Pico's role in Friday Night Funkin'. I've always sort of seen Pico as the people's character, to do what they want with. On April Fools of this year, Tom swapped out the Pico school file to instead be an alternate telling of the story, where Pico instead shows Cassandra the power of love, avoiding any need for violence. And at the end of the game, he introduces her to Boyfriend, saying that everyone at the school is totally cool with it. That whole debate over whether or not this was canon is why I assume Tankman in Week 7 comments on Pico being sexually ambiguous.
Look who it is, your sexually ambiguous, angry little friend.
The day after, Tom put back the original Pico School and made this retelling its own upload, Pico School Love Conquers All. It's labeled as a split reality, so I suppose if Tom were to ever make another official Pico game, this might not exist in that specific canon, but you know, there's a version out there where this is the story. I enjoyed the opportunity to create an alternate telling of Pico. It was like a weird sort of therapy for both myself and the characters and anyone who's attached to them. I have a little insert for you guys about another old piece of Newgrounds controversy. I had to crack up while combing old blog posts for juicy bits of Pico and Newgrounds history. Around May 2002, Pico vs. Uber Kids was featured in the FHM's list of their 100 favorite online games. This publicity drew the attention of copyright lawyers, asking that Tom remove the very short loop of music used from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Tom complied, but included the statement, "At least now we know what magazine this guy jerks off to while he's on the toilet." I just think that's a great burn and a hilarious FU to throw out there while technically complying. The saga of Pico 2 has had many ups and downs, and I felt it should have its own dedicated section in the video. But before moving on to that, we need to take a look at a character that has acted as the Wario to our beloved Pico. In 2003, the user Piconjo joined Newgrounds, labeling themselves the God of Teportal. They identified their own name as being a LeetSpeak mashup, Piconjo. They submitted hundreds of low-effort content featuring crappily drawn stick figures with Pico's signature hairdo. Many of their reviews, animations, and posts directly criticized Wade Fulp as a moderator, as well as the animated works of Legendary Frog, Ill Will Press, and David Firth. This user's contributions, both to the portal and the forums, would largely be seen as shitposts these days, although I don't think we had a word for that in 2004. Pretty well, they were troll Pico. The Piconjo jams primarily included the poorly stick-drawn Pico, but several of them, like Piconjo Jam number 20, attempted to add more to the character design, having him fight in a black trench coat. Some of his earliest depictions outside those stick animations feature the character as more anime-inspired. He's tall, muscular, sword-wielding, and with some demonic powers, fighting Wadeolf, a depiction of Wade Fulp as the fascist dictator of Newgrounds. While the character has never been commonly featured in animations or games that have come since, their appearance in 2007's Newgrounds Rumble, the Smash Bros. Style platform fighter for Newgrounds characters, designed and animated by Mindchamber, has really set the template for anything based on Piconjo that has come since. In May 2005, Piconjo learned that they had a form of kidney disease and would require a double kidney transplant. This operation took place 2 months later, and they unfortunately passed away during the operation. But that rebellious, antagonistic character lives on through their animated depiction as the rival to Pico. I've never considered Piconjo to be canon in the Pico story, but he's become a fun part of the larger Newgrounds lore. Circling back to the official Pico series, we need to talk about the infamous Pico 2 that never was, a project that has been teased ever since the release of the original game, and one that has existed in seemingly countless forms in all that time. I found what I could through the Wayback Machine, but some of these updates and posts may be lost to time. On August 22nd, 1999, within a month or two of that original game, it was first reported that a sequel was in the works, and it was gonna blow your mind. September shared that development was still underway, and in December, a new assassin mission was teased that was meant to give a sneak peek at some new mechanics to be featured in Pico 2. As far as I know, the next assassin mission was Kill Jigglypuff, which involved pumping the Pokemon full of air until they explode. I can only imagine what a pumping-based mechanic in the adult-oriented Pico series would have been for. I could have my assassin uploads out of order, but it's still fun to speculate.
I lost too many friends that day. I just want the pain to end. Yeah, it's a good thing that's what jerking off is for.
Newgrounds supporters have access to a very simplistic demo that shows a rotating Pico that follows your mouse rather like a twin-stick shooter. By mid-2000, the game was being rebooted to instead be made in Flash 5 in order to include keyboard support. From a Pico 2 teaser page shared in October 2001, Tom shared that he spent 4 months building a pretty nifty game. I lost interest in the project and later decided to scrap it completely, feeling it didn't live up to my vision of what the sequel to Pico should be. By this time, Jose Ortiz began working on and off remotely, contributing to the game. I feel like I kinda let everyone down by waiting as long as I have, but I didn't want to do it until I could do it right. That day has come. I've teamed up with Jose Ortiz, who has redesigned Pico in a style that stays true to his original character. The new Pico adventure will be grittier, sometimes darker, sometimes brighter. It'll be bigger, meaner, faster, stronger. The storyline will hopefully put the last one to shame. So here is Pico, getting a gritty reboot 4 years before Batman Begins made it a thing. The idea was for the game to pick up right where the first left off, and descriptions of the gameplay outline a free-roaming style with the ability to talk with characters, switch to a beat-em-up style fighting mode, and a gun mode to shoot anything on screen. In November 2001, Tom shared a series of Pico concepts from over the years, ones they had toyed with before landing on Mind Chamber. When it came time for a redesign, one of the early ideas was to go with an anime-style Pico. This concept was by Ryan Wifinden, who gave Otaku Pico a try. Ultimately, however, I decided that Pico should stick with the vacant little orphan Annie eyes. Having just made Disorderly together, Z-Barf drew multiple mock-ups of what Pico could potentially be, editing and revising along the way with Tom's feedback. As much as I loved seeing different renditions of Pico, none of them were the one. It's tough to redesign a character that's loved by so many people. But he then conceded that Mario has undergone several redesigns, so Pico should be able to as well. Looking at old gameplay of Disorderly that Tom and Z-Barf made together, this orange-haired character who has violent tendencies, I had to ask, was this at one point meant to be a Pico game? Maybe them trying something out? Seeing what an aged-up Pico would be like? Trying out new character designs? And then taking what they had come up with and repackaging it as something new? Disorderly was never intended to be a part of the Pico universe. What if the guy in Disorderly is a grown-up Pico? That would be a sad fate. Mind Chamber's first attempts were a little more grown up, but definitely had a standout style, with their cel-shaded appearance and bold outlines. I was looking for a younger Pico, one who's much stumpier, but still had enough legs for a running animation. Jose tried Pico with a more Calvin and Hobbes style, and the results won me over. Not only were the proportions good, but Jose really captured the innocence that Pico is meant to exude. Mind Chamber went all out and animated Pico from 8 different angles, all animating by hand, frame by frame. They even added depth to the game, with Pico shrinking in and out of the screen as he moved around. With early file size limitations of Flash games, it's absolutely unreal that they attempted to cram all of this into a game that was meant to be less than 5 megabytes. Progress was seemingly being made, and Tom even teased that the storyline of Pico 3 was already heavily mapped out, allowing larger themes and stories of the Pico series to take shape and be adequately built up through Pico 2. The most anyone ever saw of the project for the longest time, gameplay-wise, was posted in January 6th, 2002, titled Pico 2 Gameplay Demo. Tom made this one as a submission to Newgrounds, rather than sharing it in some out-of-portal repository like he normally would. It's honestly not even a game. It's a short, programmer art animated loop that Tom made for Mind Chamber to give him a sense of how the game would eventually play. As Newgrounds users are known to do, parodies of this were immediately created and shared around, including the likes of Strawberry Clock playing out this same scene. What started as a stupid little one-to-one recreation became its own janky little mini-series that ran for at least 5 episodes, all taking place in this stupid setting with equally poor art. This sort of meta weirdness is what I love most about Newgrounds. From the Shapez movies to the My Newgrounds series, I could probably and should probably do a video someday on these weird Newgrounds trends that have unfolded and played out in very unpredictable community-driven ways. Which, by the way, we have the 20th anniversary of the Clock Crew coming this August. I definitely plan to talk about that. Another demo exists with supporter access. This showcases much more of what Tom and Jose were able to put together. Because it's meant to be an exclusive for supporters of Newgrounds, I won't really be sharing much from this. There needs to be a little incentive there. Gotta be part of the club. But I can still talk about it. We came up with this between October 2001 and January 2002. Back then, it felt like we had worked on it for much longer. It's crazy how much slower time moved back then. There was also a Subway-based boss battle and a DJ dance competition that both exist as unfinished previews. It's actually awesome to realize there's a basis for rhythm gaming in the original PICO canon. No wonder he rips so hard on the mic. By June 2002, Jose was stuck with a long commute to a part-time job and was left with very little free time. Tom also indicated that his commute was holding him back and that he was essentially living on campus to get work done. Other sporadic updates were given about progress for years, reports that progress was slow, a resolution to finish the game in 2003. The very next month, I'm also back to work on PICO 2. It is daunting as usual, but at least we're making progress, right? Right? December of that year, between scheduling issues with Jose and focus being put into Tom's first console game, Alien Hominid, little to no progress was being made. After years of part-time remote work, Jose was able to join the Newgrounds staff in 2005 when they first set up their office. Perhaps progress was made on the game at this time, but as we know, it was never finished. The longer development stretched out, there became a divide in overall user patience. Some kind of enjoyed the joke that PICO 2 did not or would not ever exist. Most recently, the Friday Night Funkin team have joked that if their Kickstarter hits $5 million, they'll remake PICO School and make PICO School 2. There was an April Fool's joke upload that caused a lot of turmoil. People talked about it for weeks later, wondering what happened to it, why there wasn't more to show, when the full version would be releasing. So there's a little bit of a history with PICO and April Fool's Day as well. Some started accusing Tom of being a sellout. If I was a sellout, I'd make nothing but PICO, because it is the most popular thing I've ever made and could make a killing on merchandise. Too bad I've been wasting my time on doing what I feel like doing. Never change, Tom. I always love his direct responses and his willingness to dip the whole thing in a bit of shade. By the time that first PICO Day had rolled around, Tom had released the beat-em-up Flash classic Dad and Me and Alien Hominid on consoles, both with Dan Paladin. PICO 2 was pushed way back in priority, and at one point Tom had stated he would prefer to remake PICO 1 before ever returning to PICO 2. I showed him that snippet and asked him about it now. I don't think I'd ever remake PICO 1, and if I revisited PICO 2, I would need to start over at this point. The PICO games have always been heavily influenced by where I'm at in my life. Where PICO was influenced by my high school life, and PICO 2 was heavily influenced by my life at college in Philly. I'd want to revisit that life with the benefit of hindsight though. Speaking to the legacy of PICO and what's become of PICO 2, for a long time it was on my bucket list, but I'm not sure anymore. The idea of outsourcing a formal PICO follow-up is weird to me. I don't think I'd be able to properly communicate my thoughts into it without spending the endless hours making it myself. So while a formal PICO 2 may never come to be, the torch is carried on by remaining one of the all-time most popular characters on Newgrounds and in all of Flash gaming history. Whether it be rapping his heart out, or ripping others' hearts out, mowing down Uber kids with Uzis, fighting his way through hordes of zombies, or living peacefully through a dating simulator, literally any new and insane way fans continue to use and adapt the character, PICO is here to stay, and that legacy will continue to live on. Thank you once again to Shapez, a word that has definitely succumbed to semantic satiation at this point. Shapez, shapes, shapes, shapes. If you're hesitant about trying out a factory game like I was, the free demo of Shapez is a great place to start, and once you've spent hours and hours and hours perfecting that, it's very easy to let time slip by. The game is available for very cheap over on Steam, but I'm also hosting a giveaway that can be accessed through the description and comments of this video. So if you can't afford the game right now, be sure to take advantage of that. I know a lot of people don't like sponsored ad reads, so I thought I'd peel the curtain back a bit and let you guys know that I'm not just pocketing this money. I have a vision. This specific sponsorship is being put directly back into the channel by commissioning closed captions for all videos on 2 Left Thumbs. It takes a lot of time. I've only ever been able to do a handful myself. This is a big pipe dream that is now happening thanks to Shapez, so I'm very grateful to them. Today is yet again PICO Day. I will have a link down below to a collection that contains every PICO Day. Maybe you start with this year's, maybe you start all the way at the beginning. You're gonna have hundreds of games and animations to watch. I certainly haven't seen them all, but there are some true gems in there. I tried to show as many as I could throughout, always with the name of that creation and creator in the corner, so if anything really stood out to you, you can use that as a starting point, go to their Newgrounds account, and add a few new things to your favorites. I want to drop one more quick reminder for shapez.io. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to patrons of the channel, whose names you'll see off in the credits here, and I'll see you again soon.